Hey there, and welcome to exercise number 60. In this one, we need to write a function named fetchNamesOfAllPublicRepos that receives one parameter, a string representing a GitHub username. The function should return a promise that resolves with an array of strings representing the names of all public repositories for the user with that username. So basically we have a username. Let's get the name of all the public repos he or she has. Now, if the user doesn't exist, the return promise should resolve to an empty array. And below we have a short note saying here's the link to the GitHub API, and it's your job to find the correct endpoint to call, how to call it, and so on. Below we have an example. So if we take my username, you can see I have 40 public repositories. But keep in mind, I have 40 right now, right? In the future, if you run this function, it may be a different number, but I cannot put here a dynamic number for the example. So I put the names of the repos I have right now. And I also added a short explanation here saying, hey, this is a live API. The output may change in the future. If you want to solve this exercise for yourself, which I highly encourage you to do, then click on the link in the description. If not, keep watching and we're going to solve it together. Now, the first thing I want to do before we even go to writing the code is let's find out which GitHub API we need to call. So I have here opened the GitHub REST API link that I added in the exercise. So since we have to fetch repositories, I'm going to look here on the left side under repositories. And then I'm going to go to, I think, repositories again. And here, let's see. So we need list repositories for a user, right? This is what we need. List repositories tag. Oh, this one, list public repositories. And it says lists all public repositories in the order in which they were created. And here's the API. We have, wait. No, it's not this one. List all public repositories because you need to be authenticated. Sorry. I think it's this one, list repositories for user. Yeah, it's this one. We can see here in the endpoint, it's api.github.com/users, then the username, and then the repos. So let's just test it first. So I'm going to copy paste this. I'm going to put it here. I'm going to say I am Pava. So this is my GitHub username. And you can see I get 29 repositories. Now, there's a small catch here. This API is paginated. So if we go here, we're going to look at the query parameters. We have this one, it's called per page, and say the number of results per page, maximum 100. For more information, see using pagination in REST API, and it defaults to 30. And this is why I actually get 30 repos, not 29, sorry, because it starts at 0. And we can test I have much more if I take per page and I put it here, and then I say equals to 100. And I get 41 repositories. Okay, so this is good. Now, we're going to need to use this one because, a user may have even more than 100. The maximum is 100. So we might need to make multiple API calls. Now let's figure out how many pages and how we're going to use this. And you can see we have a link here using pagination in the REST API. So I'm going to go here. And we can see here's the documentation. But the bottom line is, if you want the short version, is, hey, the request is going to answer with this header, which has a special format, and you can see it gives us the previous page, rel prev is page number 2, and it gives us the next page, right? Rel next, page 4. And if I go back to my API call, I open the network tab and I refresh it. What do we see here? We see the response, and I can see in the response headers, I have, we should have a link. Oh, we don't have it, I think, because we don't have pagination here, right? Because we have 100. So let's actually do page 50, no, 20. And now we have this one, yeah. So now we have this link header which tells us, hey, the next page is page 2 and the last page is page 3. So we have 3 pages if we take 20 items per page. So let's do a short recap. We have an API which gives us the public repos of a user. This API is paginated, so we get at max 100 repos. And then we're gonna need to use the link header if we have more repos than that to fetch the next page and the next page, so we get the name of all public repos. Okay, so this being said, let's go back into our code and let's start with some utility function. So I want to create a function, let's say parse link header. That's gonna return number with next page or null otherwise. So I'm gonna need to do this and I'm gonna have to implement it myself, right? Because I don't know how many pages a user has, so I'm gonna need to parse this link. And let's go here and let's just take this value and we're gonna paste it here as an example, right? So this is how it looks, and let me just make the code smaller here. So we have this string and I wanna parse it and I want to get a number from it. So let's look at it and see how we can parse it. And I can see that there's a comma here that splits it. And then I want the next page, so I'm gonna have to find this inside. And then I'm gonna need to find the page like this. So I'm gonna have to do a little bit of string parsing. It's not gonna be super fun, but hey, what can you do? Okay, so first let's split it using comma. So I'm gonna say const link header parts as, and actually we're gonna need a parameter here like link header. I'm gonna say link header dot split, comma. Now I'm gonna say I want to find the part which has rel next. So I'm gonna say next part, or actually it's called part that has next is link header parts dot find, and here I get a part, and I want to say part dot includes what rel equals next, and let's use single quotes here because we have the double quotes inside. Okay, so now I find the part. If the part doesn't exist, so maybe part that has next is undefined, return null. So I don't have another page. Okay, this looks good. Now let's find the page from here. So I'm gonna have the part that has next is this one, right? So I'm gonna need to find inside it this, like page equals something, and then this bigger than sign. So actually let's use a regex for that. So I'm gonna create a regex string as gonna be page equals to, and then we're gonna have here a number, or actually more numbers. I mean, sorry, not a number, a digit or more. So I'll say 0, 9 plus, and then I'm gonna have this character, right? And then I'll say const regex is new regex of regex string. And then I wanna find the match. I wanna see, okay, does the part that has next, I wanna match it with the regex and extract the value here. So I'm gonna say const match is part that has next dot match of regex, and let's actually return match so we can see what we're dealing with here before we move on. So let me just do some enters here, and I'm gonna say okay, console log parse link header with, and let me just take this big string here and let's look at it. And we can see we have an array because this is what the match function returns us, an array or null otherwise. So the first value is the entire match, and then it's what we have between the parentheses, so 2. Now let's try and put here 21. We should see 21 there. Okay, this looks good. So I'm gonna do like this. If match is equal to null, return null. Otherwise return, I'm gonna say number of match of 1. So I wanna return it as a number. And we get 21. This looks very good. Now let's try here 100. We get 100, let's try 2. Okay, we get 2. Now let's say we don't have this, so there's no next. We should get null. Okay, so this works. Right now we have a function that can parse the link header and give us the next page as a number, or null if there's no next page. Now that we have this, what I want to do is actually create a separate function that's going to fetch a page of repositories for a user. So I say fetch public repos, and I'm gonna get a username, and I'm gonna get a page number, and I'm gonna get a per page. And let's look back at the API. So it's gonna be this one. I'm gonna say const response, and I'm gonna say async function is await fetch of this API. The username is gonna be dynamic username, and then I'm gonna put some query params. And those are gonna be per page and page, the page number. Cool. So I say per page equals per page and page equals page number. So we get the response. Now let's convert it to JSON. So JSON response is await response.json. And then what do I want to do? Actually, let's think, what should this function return? So should return the array of repos and the next page, if there's a next page. Otherwise, null. So I'm going to return something like this, repos. It's going to be JSON response, right? Because I get the repos. And I say next page is going to be parse-link header of response.headers.get link. Or if this one doesn't exist, let's do empty string. Okay, so let's test this now. So let's move the console log here. Actually, let's move it here. And I'm gonna say fetch public repos. Or actually, no, I'm gonna have to do it like this. Fetch public repos of, let's say, my username, page number 0 per page 20 dot then, and I get a response, and then I wanna console log it. And let's do this. So I get 30 repos, but I want just 20. Why does it give me 30? So, oh, because it's per underscore page. All right, per underscore page. Yeah, this looks good. So I get 20 repos and the next page is 2. Does this mean the page number starts at 1? So let's see, using pagination. Let's search for 1 here. It's gonna be page starting, starts, index. I'm trying to figure out if it starts at 1. I think so, because the next page it gives me is 2. So I think it starts as 1. Yeah, so if I do, let's say 1, I should get 20. And I get, let's say 2. I get 20 and next page is 3, and I put 3 and I get just 1. Okay, and I know I have 41. Okay, so this one is starting at, the page number starts at 1. So we're almost there actually. We have a function that calls the GitHub API, gives me a bunch of public repos for a user, paginated. It gives me information about the next page as well. Now the question is, what if, let's try a page that doesn't exist. Let's try page 10. I should get 0. That's correct. But what if I try a user that doesn't exist? So let's just put some mumbo jumbo here. And you can see repos is an object with message not found. Okay, that's not good because I want, if there's no user, what should the exercise do? Let's look here. If the user doesn't exist, the return promise should resolve to an empty array. So I want an empty array actually. So I think what we need to do is look here. If response dot status is 404, I think we can do return repos empty string and then next null. Because we know this user doesn't exist. So we can see, okay, this updated. Okay, this looks good. Okay, so now that we have this, let's comment it. And now let's go back to our function. And I know, sorry about this, we wrote 2 functions and now we finally get back to the function we were gonna write. But this is gonna be very small because we already have 2 very important functions that are gonna help us. So I'm gonna say const repos is an empty array, and let's put a let here actually. And then I'm gonna say let page number is, well, 1. I'm gonna start from 1. So I'm gonna say while page number is different than null, I'm gonna do something here, right? So I'm gonna need to do something here. And I'm gonna do what? I'm gonna call the API. And I'm gonna call it basically in a loop. So I'm gonna call one page, a next page, a next page, and so on. So I'm gonna say, okay, const, let's say fetch response is await. And here we're gonna do this, but I don't want to get into an infinite loop in this code. So let's just do page number is equal to null here so we can stop it. I'm gonna remove that in a minute, but I don't want my, because this editor is like refreshing itself and I don't want it to crash in case I get like in an infinite loop. So I'm gonna say, okay, I'm gonna call this function and I'm gonna put the username, and I'm gonna put the page number, and then let's say per page, what do I want to be? Let's say const per page is, let's take the maximum, 100, because I want to make the least amount of calls per page. Okay. And then I'm gonna do like this. Repos is, and I'm gonna take the existing repos and I'm gonna concatenate the repos here. And now I realized I have a bug because this one's called next page and this one is next. So it should be next page. And then I'm going to say page number is fetch response.next page. So in a while loop, while I still have pages, I'm going to fetch the page, then I'm going to update it with the new page number. And I'm going to keep going. And finally, at the end, I have the repos and I need their names. So I'm going to return repos.map, and I'm going to write a repo, and looking at the API, we can see here are the repos that have a name. So let's do repo.name. And finally, I think we're almost done. So let's test our function. So I'm going to say fetch public repos here of IAMPub, and we don't need any parameters, and I want to return the response. And let's see if it works. And we get an object that's undefined. Okay. This is really not what I was expecting. So I should get an... So this one is going to return an object. Repos is going to be an object. Let's just do a console log here. Console log fetch response. Okay, so repos is 41. Next page is null. So then I'm going to say, oh yeah, because I need to do a spread here as well. And there you go. I have the names. Now let's test that the pagination is actually working, because right now I don't have 100 repos. I have less than that. So let's do a per page of 10. And I should still get the same result with a short delay. And yeah, it's 41. So basically what happens now is going to make 5 calls to the API. Okay, this looks good. Let's change it back to 100. And yeah, I think we can test it. So let's test our solution. Okay, it's testing and voila, it works. Cheers and see you in the next one.